There's a lot of talk about Yemen and what's going on in Yemen. Most people ignore it because it's a country that most people have never heard of or even know where it is. As loads of people are Googling Yemen now to find out where it is on the map. But I thought I'd do a small piece that will cover what has really gone on in Yemen and why. And you'll see a common theme. Now, the Red Sea port city of Hodeidah is currently under ferocious attack in the latest stage of the West's aggression against the people of Yemen. Now, this war was initiated as a proxy war to be fought by their Gulf underlings, but defeats and setbacks have increasingly led Western countries to have a more direct involvement in it. And the latest escalation in Yemen threatens the lives of millions of people. The UN has suggested that 250,000 could be killed in the battle for the port Hodeidah. Well, this is currently what's playing out now. But this is before factoring in the disruption to supplies caused by attacking a port which provides literally almost 2/3 of the basic needs of the entire country. And it is known as Yemen's lifeline for a good reason. Like I said, it supplies 70% of imports in a country dependent on imports for 90% of its food, 90% of its fuel, and also its medicine. And given that 8.4 million people are already starving there, with a further 14 million dependent on food aid for survival, it's not hard to see how even a temporary disruption to this lifeline port could result in the deaths of millions in Yemen. So what makes Western powers and their Arab proxies so willing to contemplate such a genocidal level of killing just to ensure a Saudi Emirati victory over their impoverished neighbour? Well, the latest chapter of this resistance by the Yemen people began in the year 2000, when Yemenis of the northwest region in and around Sa'ada found their ancestral homelands under threat from two sources, the Saudis and the IMF. Go figure. Now, back in 1934, a treaty was forced on Yemen in which the historic Yemen province of Asir was annexed by Saudi Arabia. But whilst it was agreed the new border would be marked out with stones, it was also agreed that the peoples of the region would be able to freely move across the border. Yeah, right. Now, this arrangement ended when a new treaty was signed in 2000, which replaced the stone border with walls, fences and checkpoints. Sound familiar? Yeah, same people. And prevented the free passage of locals, just like the illegal Israeli wall, whose construction began at the same time, sectioning the whole region off. I told you about the wall. It's going to go all the way to Turkey and all the way round. Or so they thought anyway. Now, the Saudis were using the border enforcement as a means of separating indigenous people from their agricultural and other resources. And also, like Israel, they decided to create a buffer zone 10 kilometres deep into Yemeni territory in the process. The zone conceded to the Saudis, not to mention the extra land that was then stolen, contained some of the best farming and grazing land in Yemen, with considerable water resources available. Again, it's like a carbon copy of Palestine. At the same time, President Saleh was busy privatising what land was left in line with the demands of the IMF Structural Adjustment Programme. Really. Mr. Hussein al-Houthi emerged as the spokesman for the budding resistance movement that this theft provoked, which soon claimed 3,000 armed men for its cause. Now, its popularity was assured after all that this was a literally life and death struggle over the rights to subsist, and a struggle led to the so-called Sa'ada Wars of 2000 through 2009, although the nature of the struggle soon expanded beyond Sa'ada itself, reviving old Yemeni claims to Najran, Asir and Jizan that was lent out in 1934 to Saudi Arabia. So far there have been 5 rounds of armed struggles, ceasefires and failed negotiations followed, But with each confrontation with locals, the state created a larger group of antagonists who gravitated around the charismatic leader of al-Houthi. So that's what's going on in Yemen. Land grab, border walls, all very, very familiar. And if you look on the map, you'll see what they were planning. I called it a number of years ago based on a document I read in the 90s. That was a Vatican manifesto, and it mentioned about wars in Libya, Syria, and then into southern Turkey, and the wall would just keep going. It's the old Ottoman Empire again, the same boundaries, except now they're talking about going further south into Yemen and round. Eventually what their plan was at the time was to have a false flag event and smash the Dome of the Rock into dust, and then build the third temple there, at which point the Vatican would be moved to the third temple and Rome would be set on fire, like the so-called prophecy, which is plan, of the burning 7 hills. We need to highlight Yemen because it kind of gets forgotten in many aspects, so I hope that helped people understand what's going on there.